Welcome back, everybody, to the My Generation podcast. On today's episode of the show, we are once again returning to a previous podcast guest. Today we have Emily Cook from Doctor Who magazine back on the show. We're talking all things Doctor Who once again here on the My Generation podcast, as well as some of our new features and returning features on the show. As you know, every week we also feature Sammy Bacon and Harry Monday. They do album and film reviews, but we've recently added 3 new weekly features to the show: Emma Cusson's poetry readings, Joe Finnegan's video game reviews, and Tom Axtell's pirate profiles. Stay tuned for those all throughout the show. We'll sprinkle them in as and when throughout the next 50 minutes to an hour as we talk with Emily about Doctor Who. But firstly, welcoming her back, Emily, welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me back. Given I did destroy a lot of your gear, I seem to remember flapping my arms around and whacking microphones, but we're remote recording this time, so hey, that's solved the problem.
Yeah, last time we had Emily on the show, it was for episode 50 of the podcast. We were initially talking about Doctor Who, and that was one of the last in-person episodes I recorded before the lockdown, and Emily did nearly destroy all of the mic gear. Luckily, the mic you're listening to this episode through is still working post-Emily podcast, and yeah. I think quite lucky to be remote. You can, at this point, you won't be destroying my microphone, so it's all good on this end.
No, I'll be destroying my own stuff.
Yeah, so we'll work out. We'll put maybe a little counter in the corner for how many bits of gear Emily destroys throughout the episode with arm flailing. But yeah, great to have you back on the show. We're going to be going through lots of different stuff today. We're going to be focusing a lot around the sort of Doctor Who lockdown, because Emily, you've been doing quite a lot with Doctor Who during lockdown. Would you like to explain what you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sitting here. It's all done now. The Doctor Who lockdown initiative has been and gone, and I'm sitting here looking back over it all and thinking, where do I start? I'll start at the beginning, which is a very good place to start. It was, I think, around the 16th, 17th of March, before we were in lockdown as a country, and a lockdown was imminent, and we could, I think we all knew that life as we knew it was about to change very drastically, and it just seemed quite uncertain and scary, and I needed a bit of a distraction. So I'm a Doctor Who fan, won't come as a surprise to people, hopefully, given we had a whole conversation about it for an hour last time. And I wanted to watch some Doctor Who just as a bit of escapism, and I thought, I wonder if there's anyone else who's on their own, perhaps they're self-isolating, maybe they live with people that don't really care for Doctor Who, that would like to watch Doctor Who with me. So all I did was put out a tweet suggesting that it was the 21st of March, I think I suggested, Saturday the 21st of March, that anyone that wanted to join in could all sit at home and watch The Day of the Doctor, which is a big anniversary episode of Doctor Who, and we'll all watch it at the same time, start at 7pm, and chat about it online and have like a communal shared viewing experience. And the tweet got quite a lot of interest, and it went global. And before I knew it, there were people from all around the world saying they were going to be joining in, and then Stephen Moffat, who wrote the episode, said he was going to be joining in. And yeah, then we just had this live tweeting, tweet along of The Day of the Doctor, and we trended #1 worldwide on Twitter, which was mad, and it was just wonderful. So that kind of kick-started what then became Doctor Who Lockdown, which was, I guess, every week or so we would watch a different episode with different cast members and crew members. And just kind of feel a bit uplifted and connected at a time when a lot of people were feeling apart and alone and scared.
And it's such a really great thing. I know how much of a ripple effect it had, because I had friends come to me and said, "Oh, Max, have you heard about this watch along?" And I said, "Well, funnily enough, I'm going to be interviewing the person doing that very soon." And it's had a massive ripple effect. I wanted to know, because other communities have sort of done this during lockdown as well. I'm a massive football fan, and they've been sort of they live streamed really classic football matches throughout the years that people could watch along with, and they chose some really inspirational matches for that, like the '66 World Cup or the 2012 final day of the season. But for you, what made you pick this specific episode of Doctor Who to start with?
Well, I chose that one because it is one of my favourites. It's one of my go-tos if I need a bit of a cheering up. It's so epic and exciting. The Day of the Doctor was the 50th anniversary special of Doctor Who from 2013, and you've got two doctors in it for a start. You've got David Tennant and Matt Smith, so not just two doctors, but two of the best doctors. And it's just such a brilliant episode. And I remember at the time when it came out, it was shown globally in cinemas, and it was a huge event, and it really felt like people from around the world were getting together to celebrate Doctor Who for that 50th anniversary. So it just kind of felt appropriate to pick something that is remembered for bringing people together, because that was the point of what I was trying to do with the tweet along. So that's why I picked that episode. And then moving beyond that, obviously there's so much Doctor Who to choose from. We started doing some other episodes that perhaps had a significant anniversary. So soon after that, we watched the first episode of Matt Smith when he debuted as the Doctor on the 10th anniversary since his debut. And then we had some other anniversaries come up. And sometimes there wasn't a specific reason for watching an episode, but I put some thought into it, into which ones we were going to do, dependent on, I guess, who was available as well, which of the actors and writers and directors were going to be available to tweet with us, because that became a big part of the tweet-alongs. It wasn't just that the fans were watching together, it was that the fans were watching with the creators and stars of the show, and I thought that was pretty cool, really. Pretty cool.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, having that sort of live interaction. And what were the, actors and crew members, what were they tweeting about? Were they, doing behind-the-scenes insight or tweeting along with their opinions of the show?
Yeah, I mean, the writer of the episode was, I think on most occasions we had the writer of each episode tweeted along, and they were able to give really kind of in-depth background to the episode. Obviously they were the one that wrote it, and a lot of the writers actually went away and did lots of homework and lots of research and prepared their tweets in advance, because it's quite a fast thing to live tweet along with something, so they would have some tweets planned, and sometimes they were posting out extracts from parts of the script that weren't ever released, so there was kind of new information there for the fans, which was really cool. Directors and other people involved in the show were obviously tweeting their memories and their insights, their thoughts, and same with the actors, really. I mean, it's funny because if you get someone like we did get Matt Smith and David Tennant and Catherine Tate and Karen Gillan and all sorts of others. We did get them live tweeting at one point. And with people like that, literally whatever they tweet, doesn't matter how bland or boring or whatever they say, those tweets just went kind of mad, and people were liking and retweeting and commenting. So I think it was a really good combination to have that mix of fan reaction, writers' insights, crew members and cast members' memories of being on set. It's just quite a unique thing, really. I can't think of any other thing like it, to be honest. And a lot of the writers are saying to me as well, it felt like a performance, because they were going onto Twitter, onto this live platform, knowing that there were thousands and thousands of fans around the world ready to receive what they were going to say and what they were going to put out into the world. And yeah, it's non-stop. You have to keep putting out the content and reacting to people, and then at the end of it, it's quite exhausting, but a good exhausting. And yeah, I think it's quite a unique format that we managed to develop.
Yeah, it's almost like a live director's cut, but from different areas of the production. I think almost more things could sort of pick up on that going forward, getting that live. Actually, how something is being made whilst you're watching it is always so fascinating, but never really been done before in that format. I do agree. I did want to know then, because you got all these big names, but because this was obviously snowballing and getting more and more popular, did you have to, from the sort of producing perspective, have to go out and contact them, or did they just get involved because of how many people seemed interested?
It was a bit of a mix of the two. I mean, it did snowball quite quickly after the first one. I realised, this is quite a big thing I have on my hands here. This could be brilliant, but it's going to take a lot of work. You need to be prepared for the work. But yeah, it generated quite a lot of interest, and once it had got going, it was a case of I approached lots of people through various contacts that I have or mutual friends, and would ask them about it. Sometimes the person wasn't aware of what was going on with Doctor Who Lockdown, and I'd explain it, and they'd say yes. Sometimes they had heard of it and said yes straight away. Sometimes they even approached me. I had some people approaching me and saying, I'd love to do one of your live tweet-alongs. Can I be involved? And then I think of a way of involving them. Some people did take a bit more convincing. I think there were a few people that are quite rightly wary of Twitter. Because it can be a lovely place, but it can be a toxic place as well. And so they were obviously quite concerned about if they've got a high profile, a large profile, and are very well known. They were a bit wary about getting too close to the front line of Twitter. So I actually set up a generic account on Twitter for Doctor Who Lockdown, which meant that these people could just borrow that account and use that account without having to kind of have a long-term presence, if that makes sense. But yeah, it was a real mix, and definitely as it went on and more people had heard of Doctor Who Lockdown, I think it became easier to get people involved on the one hand, but on the other hand, once I'd been using up people, it was harder to get new names, I suppose, because I'd been through lots of the writers, lots of the directors. So yeah, it was a bit of a mix of the two, but it was a good challenge.
And did you also get other sort of roles involved as well? Because I imagine with something like this, costume designers would. Because I mean, I grew up on Doctor Who. The costumes are the things that always stand out to me when I think Doctor Who. Did you get anyone involved from that department?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was really conscious of wanting to celebrate every department of Doctor Who, and through my job writing for the magazine, I've kind of got a really good understanding of just how Doctor Who is made. And one thing that people that work on the show always say is they want to celebrate each and every department because it's such a collaboration to bring the show together. So yeah, we absolutely had, it's quite funny, when we did the tweet-along of the 11th Hour, which was Matt Smith's first episode, that was on the 3rd of April on its 10th anniversary. I got Ray Holman, the costume designer, who just designed Matt Smith's costume, to tweet along. And this is really cool. This is just very kind of serendipity, this. The 3rd of April was also National Tweed Day, and Matt Smith's costume is a tweed jacket. So
the stars aligned.
Costume designer. Absolutely. So yeah, we had Ray Holman, the costume designer, involved in that. We had people from Millennium FX who just do amazing prosthetics on Doctor Who and other work in that area, tweeting along for some of the stuff. We had Murray Gold, the composer, tweeting along for a different episode to talk about the musical side of things. So yeah, it was where possible, it was a real mix, and I just wanted to pull in as many different people as possible.
Oh, amazing. Well, yeah, this is covering new ground, and hopefully in the future this will sort of inspire a new use of Twitter, because that is a way I've never really seen it used before. Again, I'll bring it back to the example of football. You know, when you watch a live game, you get the score updates. This almost feels like it, but you're getting behind the scenes look at a film. It's like meshing that, but with a director's cut. Incredible. Well, Emily, I wanted to move over now actually to a YouTube project that you produced, the Doctor Who Lockdown: The Best of Days. And I wanted to know a little bit more about that and what that production involved and what it was.
Yeah, okay. The Best of Days was the last in a long line of little Doctor Who productions that I did. Each production was designed to be released alongside one of the tweet-alongs we were doing, so it would maybe be a sequel or a prequel, or just something inspired by a particular episode. And I, where possible, was trying to get some of the writers and actors involved, and we managed to produce something for every single tweet along. So there's a whole series of things, but we ended on a piece, as you say, called "The Best of Days," and yeah, this is really special. So just for context, our final tweet along was going to be Peter Capaldi's big finale from series 10, which was World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls, and we had that planned. Unfortunately, we made the decision to, I say unfortunately, it's sad that we couldn't have our big epic finale, but it was the right decision to cancel that tweet along, given certain events that were happening in the world, and the Black Lives Matter movement. There was just a particular scene in that might have been troubling for certain fans at this particular time. So we made the decision to cancel that tweet along, but we still had this extra special feature to release as part of it, and it features two of the 12th Doctor's companions, Nardole, played by MacLeod, and Bill Potts, played by Pearl Mackie. And Stephen Moffat wrote the script, and the idea was trapped on a spaceship, which is where we find him at the end of the episode The Doctor Falls, and Bill Potts is on Earth, and they're just sending each other kind of daily positivity messages. And so it's quite a hopeful, positive piece, but Pearl Mackie's character, Bill, who is on Earth, makes reference to some of the things that are actually going on in our real world situation at the moment, and talks about, or kind of hints at the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. Doesn't specifically mention coronavirus, but there's a hint of that. And she also mentions as well that she's been on a march, and hopefully your listeners can read into that and kind of take the message away from that of what we were trying to imply there. We used the piece to raise money for various different Black Lives Matter initiatives that Pearl Mackie had selected. And that was a little bit different to what we'd done before, because our previous productions were raising money for the film and TV charity. Because everyone that's been involved in these productions hasn't been paid for it at all. These have all been produced on zero budget, with very little time, with very little resources. And I thought, given people are giving their time and talent for free, we could definitely do something in terms of raising money for this. So yeah, the Best of Days raised, I don't know how much, but hopefully raised a lot of money for Black Lives Matter initiatives. And it was just a really good, quite emotional way, but hopeful way to end Doctor Who lockdown.
Yeah, and to do this with no budget, you must have like a great working relationship with Stephen Moffat to get all this produced alongside him and all the collaborators and the actors. What was it like then putting this together with no budget?
Well, I like a challenge. I also run my own charity, so I've had a bit of experience at kind of getting people to do stuff for you for little or no money, because there just isn't any. And yeah, in this situation, obviously I was working independently. I wasn't working on behalf of the BBC or the Doctor Who brand or anyone, so I personally didn't have a budget. I was producing this all in my own time. And it kind of came about when, going back to the first tweet along with the Day of the Doctor, when it was shown in cinemas, there was a kind of intro scene that was shown, which featured Strax the Sontaran telling people to obey cinema etiquette and to behave in the cinemas. And it was a really fun little scene. And I saw a few people tweet to say, oh, I'm going to rewatch that before we have our big tweet along with the Day of the Doctor. And I actually read that and I thought, I wonder if we can create our own 2020 lockdown style version of a kind of new intro scene. So I've interviewed Dan Starkey, who plays Strax, before, and I just got in touch with him, sent him a DM, and I said, I wasn't joking when I posted that comment. I think we could actually do something. What do you say? Are you up for being involved? And he said, yeah, I'll be up for it. And we decided that we should get in touch with Stephen Moffat, because he created the character. And so I just literally emailed him. This was, by the way, the night before our tweet along. I emailed him and I said, I had this idea to do a little new scene with Strax. I said, A, are you happy for us to use the character and to do this? And B, do you kind of have any pointers or guidelines or lines that you would like to contribute to this? And a few hours later, that evening, popped into my inbox was a script from Stephen Moffat, which was very exciting. And then me and Dan just spent the next morning remotely contacting each other to try and get this thing created and recorded. We had this extra, it's called Strack Saves the Day. That was our first one. We put it out, it went down really well, and then from that point on it kind of became part of the tweet-alongs. Part of the whole thing was to have this an extra piece of content. And yeah, it was something that most of the writers were just so up for doing it. It was almost like they had these extra stories already in their minds and they just needed an opportunity to do it. And I just explained to them all what it was about and that it was raising money for the film and TV charity, and that there was no budget. And you know what? Everyone that got involved was so great at getting into the spirit of what this thing was and realising actually at the moment we need the Doctor, we need a bit of a hero to come and save us. And I think what we did was quite, I look back on it now and there hasn't been much time passed since it all finished, so I haven't had much time to reflect, but even now I can see that what we did was amazing, and I'm convinced that we wouldn't have been able to pull anything like that off at any other time apart from being locked down in a global pandemic, because it's a great leveler. Everyone was in the same situation, stuck at home, needing something to do. And a lot of people actually said to me that it was a real pleasure to be involved because it just gave them something to work towards, a bit of a focus. So I think it's been really wonderful in many respects. So yeah, that's kind of how I got over the hurdle of having no budget.
Yeah, well, as listeners of the show will know, I am a filmmaker and have worked on zero budget before, and I think that it's something so special about how in this time people are turning to different ways to make small films. I've made a couple of small films myself in lockdown. This is a small little film that you've made. And it's incredible having all of this actually made for zero budget, but also with completely remotely. That's the bit that I think is so special, not being able to actually connect with people, but still connect and make something, and that is what to me made what you've done so special. Now, Emily, we've still got loads to talk about, so much more to talk about, but we're going to go to some of our features now. We're going to go to the features we have had on the show every single week on the My Generation podcast since the start of March. It's Sammy Bacon's album reviews and then Harry Monday's film reviews. They are our main staples of the show. And then later on in the show, we're going to have Emma Cusson and Joe Finnegan and Tom Axtell all doing their features on the show as well. But firstly, we start off with Sammy Bacon. And here, like every Thursday, is the album that Sammy recommends this week.
Hi! Hello. It's me. Again. Talkies by Girl Band is the album I'm going to take you to see this week. Girl Band are a noise rock, no wave, an experimental rock and roll outfit from Dublin. They create this sounds which kind of sounds like, to me, if you threw concrete and a tin and an anxiety attack into a blender. I hope that give you some clue to what they sound like. But yeah, Girl Band had success with early songs like Paul and Pez for Lunch on their debut album, Holding Hands with Jamie, which is also very good. And on this album, you've great songs like Going Norway, Shoulder Blades. What's so interesting about Girl Band is that they don't really play chords. They've said they've tried to write songs where they play chords. It just doesn't really sound good, and instead they use the bass and the guitar as more of a soundboard. And the guitarist said a lot of the time he doesn't even press down on the fretboards. He just sort of holds his hand there and then just lets all his pedals do the work, which I think is just great. I think it's don't go into this album expecting to sort of like it straight away. I guess this music is difficult and abrasive, but if you're like me and you like guitar music where the guitarist doesn't approach the guitar as a guitar but more as a soundboard, I guess, then I think you will like this. It's just brilliant. and just so like physical. Girl band, Talkies, check it out, they're great. Then check out Holding Hands with Jamie, their first album. Like I said, if you like a band which kind of takes a more experimental approach to creating sounds rather than just going, hey, let's play some chords, da 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 da. I don't know. Check them out, they're good. See you next time.
Thank you for that, Sammy, and we'll tune in with Sammy next week to find out what his next album review is. Thank you so much, and please let us know in the comments, whether you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud, or Spotify, what you think of the albums Sammy has reviewed. We're now moving over to Harry Monday. He does a weekly film review here on the My Generation podcast, and here is the film that Harry recommends this week.
This week's film recommendation is more of a unheard of film by the Coen brothers of recent. And that is indie movie Inside Llewellyn Davis. This movie just follows the life of an acoustic singer aptly named Llewellyn Davies as he struggles with keeping a relationship along with trying to sort out his musical career. And it features everything you would expect from the Coen brothers. Just really natural dialogue that just draws you into every word that the characters are saying, while also maintaining a good music atmosphere to it, which is quite original from the Coen brothers. So this week's film recommendation is Inside Llewellyn Davis.
Thank you for that, Harry, and we'll tune in with Harry next week to find out what his next film review is. Emily, earlier when I mentioned that I had a friend who came to me and said, "Oh, Max, have you heard about these Doctor Who watch-alongs? They sound really cool." That was Harry, by the way, and you've heard Harry every week on the My Generation podcast. He's a really big Doctor Who fan, so we've got to go and show him some love.
Right.
If you've seen what he has been recommending, please do let us know. You can also contact the Facebook page at the My Generation podcast if you have questions. Now, I think we may have covered this a little bit in the last episode as well, but I did have a question come in from William, who wanted to ask you specifically, Emily, how you sort of got involved with Doctor Who magazine in the first place. Where did that journey, if we're taking it all the way back before lockdown, before all this, where did you first get involved with Doctor Who magazine?
I first got involved with Doctor Who magazine while I was finishing my degree, my master's degree at university. I knew somebody that I knew somebody that knew somebody that worked there, and I was putting together a bit of a magazine portfolio project at university and just looking for a little bit of experience in that area of work. And obviously, being a big Doctor Who fan, Doctor Who magazine was just the perfect thing. And so I just kind of asked if there would be any chance of having some work experience on the magazine. And the person that I knew spoke to his partner who worked for Doctor Who magazine, and eventually we managed to get a work experience placement sorted for, I think it was a week or so. And I went and did that. I loved it. I wanted to work there forever, but I kind of came away and had a bit of a reality check and said to myself, well, you need to have a plan for what you're going to do. You can't just expect anything to come of that work experience. But it did. And they offered me some work. So I started working there, just doing basic editorial work, and the role has just evolved over time, I suppose, and now I do quite a lot of interviewing for the magazine as well, and writing various different articles, as well as still being on the editorial team. So that's how my kind of connection with Doctor Who magazine started. I was a reader of Doctor Who magazine before then, so I was familiar with it on a kind of a reader, consumer, fan level. But now just some of the people that worked there and work there now are just some of my closest friends and colleagues in my life, and I can't imagine my life without it.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I think it's clear how much passion comes across. I think we got some feedback from the last episode that it's clear that you could just talk about Doctor Who for absolutely days. And obviously you're quite prominent with it on Twitter specifically. Are there any other platforms that you sort of share your Doctor Who love and enthusiasm on?
Any and every platform. I'd say Twitter has been the most active over lockdown, but I share all sorts on Instagram, really. Some of it is Doctor Who, because that is part of my life. There's other things as well. And the odd bit, I don't really use Facebook all that much anymore, really. But yeah, it's mainly Twitter, because it is quite interactive. It's a great place to interact with other fans. But yeah, any opportunity I get, I do end up talking about Doctor Who quite a lot. I mean, feel sorry for my housemates. Neither of them are massive Doctor Who fans, and they have put up with an awful lot of Doctor Who in this house over lockdown. And in fact, they've been hearing and seeing little snippets of the productions that I've been working on that have kind of been really hotly anticipated by other Doctor Who fans, and it's kind of, I think, just gone over their heads. They haven't understood the significance of what I've been making. But that's great, Doctor Who is great, but there is more to life than Doctor Who, and I do find it helpful to have people in my life that can remind me of that and drag me out of the Doctor Who bubble sometimes.
Yeah, I think that that's just sort of a healthy, relationship, because I love film as much as anyone, but it's always great to have non-filmy friends so I can just chat about life stuff, and it goes the same way with social media, doesn't it? How Twitter is obviously a great place, but you obviously also want to sort of manage your time on Twitter, because it's a 24-hour platform, really, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I'm actually on a Twitter detox break at the moment. I probably won't be, I don't know when this is going to come out, but by the time this comes out I probably won't be, but I have spent so much time on Twitter over lockdown with all of these tweet-alongs, and it is mostly lovely, but like I said earlier, it can be quite toxic at times, and there has been some nastiness towards what I've been doing, which has been surprising, given it's I thought it was just a nice thing to do. There have been some people that have taken issue with it, different aspects of it, and have been quite rude and nasty about it, and that's been really hard to take. So there is a negative side to Twitter, and yeah, at the moment I just feel like I need a bit of a break from it, because you're right, it's so all-consuming. At the moment, with the state of the world, people are really anxious about things, people are really angry about things, and I just think Twitter isn't the best way to view the world, and it can be so easy to kind of get trapped in that and to see news and opinions and all sorts of things come up on your Twitter feed. And actually it's important, I think, to remember that you're in an echo chamber, because you're seeing those things based on who you follow, so it's a biased view of the world, and also it's just a very distorted view of the world, because the world is beyond Twitter. And I think that while we've been at home, these media has been great for connecting people, and I'm not knocking that at all. I think it's invaluable, but I think it's important to remember that it can be such an unhealthy filter of the world at times. And at the moment, I think we all need to be seeing things as clearly as possible in order to make proper, productive, proactive change in the areas that need change. Like there's injustices we need to fight, and I think that's not going to happen through Twitter, and that's kind of where I'm at with it all at the moment.
Yeah, no, I fully understand that, because it is Twitter and other social media platforms have clearly been so pivotal in your, what you do. But it is right in lockdown to balance that. I think at the start of lockdown, I was definitely using my phone more than usual, and have sort of reduced and pulled that back. I mean, if we sort of bring this podcast all the way back to its essence, the first episode of this was me talking about a social media detox I did, and that was the very first one, because off the back of that social media detox, I decided to start a podcast. And so it does give you that headspace, and I imagine that's going to really sort of at least channel you, so when you're back on Twitter, it's just going to be only up from there from this time.
I think so. It is hard. Like I must say, I love my phone. I love social media. I spend far too much time on it, and it has been really hard. Like I'm doing this Twitter detox at the moment. I haven't detoxed from social media entirely, but a few weeks ago I did try a couple of days just not going on my phone at all, and I definitely reaped some benefits from it. But it was, especially to begin with, really difficult, because you just have the instinct to grab your phone or click on an app, and I definitely felt some withdrawal symptoms to begin with, which is a sign that I think you're addicted and it's not very healthy. But yeah, it was hard. I was missing it, but realizing how much of my time I just waste scrolling. You know, I watched a documentary. I think it was a Panorama thing. I can't remember exactly, I might be wrong on that, but it was something about social media and how we become addicted to it, and it's totally designed to suck us in and to make us addicted. You know, things from like the fact that you can just endlessly scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. There's something really addictive to that. There's also something really addictive to the fact that if you think about notifications, right, pretty much all, well, maybe not all, most notifications that you get on your phone and on apps and things are red. And there's something about that colour red that just stimulates something in your brain and makes you like alert and makes you want more of it, and it becomes almost a bit of a drug. Like you want to get more of these notifications that are liking your posts, and then that makes you feel really validated and popular, and so then you just get trapped in this cycle and like wanting more and more of those notifications. And I watched that documentary and I was like, oh gosh, like yes, I can see that, and it's really easy to get trapped into it. So I hope that having detoxes help you to, I guess, have a more of a healthy relationship with phones and social media. But it's hard because they're designed to be addictive.
Yeah, I fully understand that. Well, when I did mine, I also sort of felt those withdrawals. And if you want more details on my side of the story, you can go back to episode number 1 of the show, which feels like many moons ago. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's got an addictive nature to it, but for me, what I've sort of gained from mine was, you know, it makes you sort of look clearly ahead and more aware of your surroundings, which is always, you know, when you're sort of looking down at the phone, you can sort of forget the space you're in, which was really weird to me, because for mine, I went to Brighton for sort of like a 3 days away on my own in Brighton, just without my phone, and I feel like I could remember details of Brighton better than I could almost remember the place I lived in, because I actually paid attention to it. It's strange how it works.
Oh, totally. In fact, just going to find something. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, actually, of how you can just be more present in the moment, and how social media affects that. Yeah, so recent scientific research suggests that our perception of time is actually speeding up thanks to our obsessive use of smartphones and the overabundance of technology in our lives. A psychologist has found evidence that our constant use of technology is making our brains more efficient at processing information, and as a result, tricking us into thinking time is passing faster than it actually is.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
It's so interesting, and it's so scary. And then this other thing that was kind of really scary as well is when you're on your phone and you're perhaps not living in the moment and your brain's just in other places. Whereas when we get stuck living in our heads, we become slaves to our habitual thoughts and behaviours, such as just getting addicted to your phone for hours, and end up missing out on so much of life. For example, if you're 30 years old with a life expectancy of around 80, you have 50 years left to live. But if you're living in your head or on your phone for most of that time and only fully engaging with life for around 2 hours in a 16-hour day, which is what ends up happening for most of us, get this, you've only got another 6 years and 3 months of fully engaged life left.
That sounds crazy. I mean, Emily, please send this article to me and I'll put it in the description of the episode for people to...
Oh, I wrote it. It was a blog I wrote.
You wrote? Oh, amazing. Yeah, send it over.
It's based on other people's research, but it was a blog post that I put together a little while back. But yeah, it's just, shocking. We waste so much of our lives on our phones and just getting stuck in our own heads.
Yeah, that's not something I was even aware of, but I feel like that's why for me at least, the first couple of the first 2 months of the lockdown definitely felt like they absolutely flew by at a speed that I've never sort of felt life fly by before. And so no, I think that couldn't be more true. Again, we're going to link Emily's article in the description of this episode, whether you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud or Spotify. You can go down there and find that. Please do have a read, because that does sound fascinating, really, because that definitely does put your life into perspective, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Nothing like a statistic to scare you.
But that is also hopefully, at least a call to action to maybe try social media detoxing if you haven't, because I can say I thoroughly enjoyed it when I did. It helped me sort of re-engage with my flow state when it came to writing and things. It definitely helped engage me, and it does, if for some reason it feels like it does slow down time, which is weird, because I only detoxed for 3 days, but I can remember those 3 days very clearly still all this time later, which is why I probably bring it up too much in too many podcasts. But I've got some more questions for Emily, but we're going to go back to Emily in just a moment to keep going on with the discussion of Doctor Who. Went on a nice wild tangent with social media there, but a fascinating subject, so always great to talk about it. But we're going into some of our newer features on the show. As I said at the start, it's episode 84. These features have only been in the show since episode 78, so they're very, very new, these 3 features, and I'd love to know what you think of them. It's Emma Cusson. She does poetry readings. Joe Finnegan, he does video game reviews. And Tom Axtell brings a pirate fact or profile every week to the show. 3 very different features, but very excited to share them with you on today's show. And firstly, we're starting with Emma Cusson and her poetry readings. Here is the poem that she would like to share with us all this week.
It's funny how long you can know someone of someone. A glance across the room, an acquaintance in the crowd. The sorry after you, jig in the doorway you both so happen to be passing through. A stranger on the lips, dancing behind your teeth and on your tongue, gestured in the most unlikely of conversations. Stranger to your hips, and oh how they move when you become lost amongst music. But life threw us into the most unlikely of situations. You were my partner in geography, now my partner in crime. You was my secondary school crush. Well, you still are, but now I don't have to admire you from afar. The person I would double take to as you pass me by. Now the person with the welcoming fragrance as we hug after a long goodbye. Do you remember how we met? Falling behind your work just because you wanted to annoy me for 1 moment longer. I say annoying blindly, as there was nothing annoying about the smile you put on my face. It's unlikely to think we danced in the same solitary summer fields to bands oh so loud. Now you're the one holding my hand, guiding me through the crowd. And I believe you hated me once. Did I get that right? Now I'd hate to think of life without you if I'm completely transparent. It's unlikely at best how long you can know someone of someone before they become a significant someone. This poem is called Unlikely, and I dedicated it to my friends. There's a part of each of them within the words.
Thank you for that, Emma. And we'll tune in with Emma once again next week to hear her next poetry reading. Emma is a Kent-based poet. She's performed some of her poems pre-lockdown, obviously, in areas around Canterbury and Thanet. We're very excited to hear more of her work. You can follow Autumn Bones on Instagram to see written versions with some of her photography of her poetry over there on Instagram. Next, we've got Joe Finnegan. We've had Joe on the podcast a few times before talking video games. He's trying to recommend you an eclectic mix of games from, PC, console, shooters, horror games, any kind of game you can think. Joe is trying to do different ones every single week, so that no matter what kind of games you're interested in, there'll be something new for you to try. And here is the game that Joe recommends this week.
Hello. The game I'm recommending today is Fall Guys, an insanely fun party multiplayer game. You play as a weird-looking jelly bean character who can be dressed up with all kinds of outfits, and you race or fight against 59 other jelly beans to determine who will be the last bean standing. There are a number of different minigames in all. I think there's about 18 in total, although developers have said that this will be added to in the future. These games can range from team games, such as a football spin-off where your team has to put an oversized ball into the other team's net. Then you also have racing events where you have to fight through obstacle courses similar to that of Takeshi's Castle or Total Wipeout on TV. There's such a huge range of gameplay to this, and by adding up to 3 friends in your party, you can share the fun with your friends as well. Fall Guys is currently available on PS4 and PC only.
Thank you for that, Joe, and we'll tune in with Joe once again next week to find out what his next video game review is. Do let us know in the comments if you have played any of the games that Joe recommends. And now for one of the most interesting features on the show for sure. It's Tom Axtell. Every week on the My Generation podcast, he brings a pirate fact or profile to the show. A very interesting new feature we've got, going through loads of different moments in history and telling you stories you may not have heard of before. And here is the pirate that Tom would like to tell you about this week.
Hello and welcome to Tom's Prolific Pirate Profiles. Today we are talking about Edward England. England was born in 1685 in Ireland and started his career as a privateer during Queen Anne's War, also known as the War of the Spanish Succession. When England was sailing to Jamaica, his ship was captured by Captain Christopher Winter, who forced him to join his crew and turn to piracy. England caught the attention of Captain Charles Vane, who then invited England to be his quartermaster. England was so popular that he became in command of his own ship. It was about at this time where the King's pardon was offered by Woodes Rogers. England, not wanting to take the pardon, escaped with his ship and crew. Knowing that the Caribbean was getting too dangerous for pirates, England sailed to the coast of Africa. On this voyage, England captured many ships and also met Howell Davis, another pirate, who England was so impressed with, he gave Davis the command of one of his ships. One specific ship that England took while on the way to Africa was called the Cadogan, a ship from Bristol commanded by a man named Captain Skinner. This captain owed various debts and was in bad blood with many of the men on England's crew, so much so that they tortured and killed Skinner. Once in Africa, the crew stayed in a town for a while. The author of A General History of Pirates states that while England's crew was here, they lived very wantonly for several weeks, committing outrageous acts and getting into arguments with the natives, several of whom they killed. Upon leaving this town, they ended up burning it to the ground. After this, the crew sailed further east, plundering ships as they went. One ship was the Cassandra, led by James McCrae. This particular battle lasted for hours, and when McCrae ran aground, he was forced to escape to the shore. However, after starving in the woods, McCrae was forced to surrender. England's first mate, John Taylor, and almost all of the crew wanted to kill McCrae as revenge for the 90 or so pirates who were killed in the battle. But England decided to spare him. This proved to be unpopular, so unpopular that there was a mutiny, and England, along with 3 other members, were marooned on an island called Mauritius. Here, they managed to survive for 4 months with inadequate provisions, and against all odds, they built a ship out of scrap wood they found and sailed it to Madagascar. Here, England lived for less than a year, surviving on charity from pirates who were believed to be a part of the crew of Henry Avery. England died in 1721. Edward England is probably most known for his famous flag, the Jolly Roger, which featured a skull with 2 crossed thigh bones. And that was the story of Edward England.
Thank you for that, Tom, and we'll tune in with Tom next week to find out what the next pirate fact or profile is. Please do let us know in the comments what you think of all these new features. They've only been on the show for a couple of weeks now, so we're very excited to feature more of their stuff. Going back to Emily now to continue our conversation about Doctor Who. Obviously, at the moment, Emily was still in lockdown as of the time of recording this. It's the 10th of June. I wanted to sort of know from you where the sort of future of Doctor Who is heading. Where is Doctor Who as a franchise heading for you?
Well, that's a really tricky thing to answer. I think like every TV production and the whole industry really, it's an uncertain time because people are hoping to get productions up and running, but not quite knowing how they're going to be able to do that within the restrictions of social distancing and all of that. In terms of Doctor Who, they're not scheduled to start recording until I think later this year, perhaps autumn time this year. So there's a bit of time for them to work it out, but I don't know the ins and outs and the details of kind of how they're going to be preparing for that. All I know is that they are preparing for it, and that there have been a lot of people working remotely and working really hard during lockdown to try and make sure that the next series of Doctor Who can be made. But yeah, it's not been an easy time for them.
Yeah, I can fully empathise with that. Obviously, the film industry has been hit quite massively due to the current situation, because going on set, social distancing can be quite a difficult thing. So I know that there's guidelines being put out on what you can do, so you can definitely look for those guidelines specifically for the film industry on what to do with social distancing. But that's going to affect all productions going forward in just everything, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that I was really keenly aware of actually towards the beginning of lockdown. One of the things I haven't mentioned actually is that the Doctor Who lockdown project that I organised was raising. No, I did mention this actually. I'm getting confused because I'm talking too much and saying too many things. The Doctor Who lockdown project raised, I think, it was over £13,000 for the film and TV charity. And people asking me why it was raising money for the film and TV charity when there were perhaps other more important causes. And my personal response to that is that there is so much need in the world all the time, that specifically in this global pandemic there have been so many areas of life that have been affected and that need vital funds just to kind of get through this difficult time. And the reason that we were raising money for the film and TV charity is because I'd become aware that the TV industry was going to be hit, like everything, and we weren't necessarily, I say we as viewers, as TV viewers, we weren't necessarily going to realise the impacts of this until round about kind of springtime next year, when things that would have been made round about now on our screens, if you see what I mean, because they weren't able to be made. So there's going to be a drought of new television and new series, and there were two things about that kind of really struck me. One is that that's a lot of people's livelihoods affected, a lot of actors and people that work in the industry that are unable to work and unable to do anything because they can't work from home in the way that perhaps other people can. So the film and TV charity supports people like that, and I thought that was an appropriate thing to do. But also the fact that at this time, more than ever, we as people just coping with what is going on in the world need a distraction. We need escapism for our mental health. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, knowing that I can just escape off into a fictional series or film or whatever is it's a safe haven. It's much needed escapism. And I thought, actually, it's not just a case of just being TV. You can't belittle it to that, because actually, what are you doing during lockdown? I suspect you're watching a lot of telly, and I suspect it's helping your mental health. So yeah, those are the reasons for supporting the film and TV industry, and they just do amazing work. So it was a real privilege to support them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with how important the industry is, because it's also just nice to have things to look forward to. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the films Dune and Tenet and the French Dispatch as well. Those are the three top of my movie lists, and knowing that, you know, they're in the sort of post-production phases is, you know, something that's keeping me going, because I'm really looking forward to that, to those projects. But a lot of projects that have even been finished have been put on, you know, the back burner, like No Time to Die, the James Bond movie's been delayed because of coronavirus, and it's one of many films that should have released by now but haven't. And so we've got this really weird period where there's not a whole lot of new coming out, which is odd, and which is why I think people at this time are sort of, you know, these watch-alongs are so important, because you're going on to the nostalgia and you're rewatching something with a new lens. It's the same with what I was saying earlier with the football, going back and watching old matches, because at the time when this was more prominent, there weren't new matches to watch. It's quite interesting how that's working, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I remember, yeah, it really is. Obviously, when I say, we've got no new TV, obviously I'm really aware that there's a huge list of backlog of TV programmes and films that obviously we can't watch everything. There's loads of stuff I haven't watched, and that backlog could keep me going for a long time. But it's really funny. At the beginning of the tweet-alongs, the Radio Times put out an article about, Radio Times Online put out an article about the Doctor Who tweet-along I was organising and told people how they could get involved. And I just messaged them and said, thank you for the support with this. And they said, it's a pleasure. It's actually nice to put out an article which is telling people that something is happening, as opposed to all their other articles at that time, which was, this has been cancelled, that's been cancelled, that's been delayed, that's not happening. So it's really nice to kind of have something that was happening to promote. And also people that were involved in, fans involved in tweeting along and what have you, I saw quite a lot of comments of people saying that what they really liked about it was that they put the tweet along in their diary as an event that was happening on a particular date at a particular time, a specific thing with other people. And I don't know about you or anyone else, but I haven't had much in my diary to look forward to. And so I think it's been really cool, even though it is revisiting something from the past, there's actually real joy in that. And I'm just really pleased with how it's worked on many levels.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely pulled back people's calendars. My calendar went from being, right before lockdown happened, was probably the busiest period of my life, and then it went from that to empty. Beside I do work for my family as well, part of the family business, and so I had that to keep me going at home. But in terms of like evening events, it was zero straight away, and that's such an odd feeling. And being able to, like you said, put that stuff, the lockdown stuff, into a diary actually does help a lot. I did it for watch-along football matches. I've done it for virtual quizzes, virtual events that I now frequently attend, and having... do you think having something, regular that's online in the diary as well also helps?
I think so. It gives a bit of structure when a lot of structure has been taken away from people's lives. I speak as an extrovert who really struggles with not seeing people, not being around people. I love being in different places and just doing different things. So yeah, as someone with that mindset, I was really quite scared, I think is an appropriate description of just the thought of not having a social calendar, in quite the same way. And it certainly helped me having mostly the Doctor Who tweet-alongs, but also who hasn't done virtual quizzes and various other things. And it's just been a real lifeline.
Yeah, and because you've also been creating with it as well, it's like that you've had things to sort of consume, like in the way that I go to quizzes, or me and a couple of friends play something called Jackbox TV, which I thoroughly recommend. It's very fun. Not sponsored, but I love Jackbox TV. Really sort of fun games that can sort of, they're very informal, comedic games that you can just play with a laptop and interact with. They're interactive games, so I do those every single week, and that's a lovely bit of structure. But for you, it's not only just the consuming of content that you've got structure for; it's the creating of it in this lockdown. It actually puts things in the to-do list that are work, and that must be great at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that was really wonderful. I am someone that loves to keep busy, and I am also a very creative person. So I think to have been able to find an outlet and a means of expressing that creativity from being trapped at home has been really, really wonderful. Totally unexpected. Like, if you'd have said to me at the beginning of this this lockdown, that this was all going to happen, I wouldn't have believed you. I was so worried at the beginning, thinking, oh, like, my life is going to ground to a halt. I'm not gonna have enough work. I'm not gonna have enough stuff to keep me busy. But it's just been, really, really wonderful. And actually, on occasions, on some days that were really, really busy with producing all of this content, I was actually communicating with far more people than I think I ever have done before. Just the rate of emails and messages that were coming through to keep up with was quite a lot, but it was just wonderful to feel connected. And I've virtually met some wonderful people through this Doctor Who lockdown project, and that's been a really kind of unexpected thing as well. So it's just been a wonderful thing. I hate to kind of sit here and talk about me, because the reason I did it wasn't for me. It was to connect people. But a lot of people have actually asked me, like, oh, you are okay with it, aren't you? I know it's a lot of work. I hope you're not getting too stressed out by it all. Do stop if it becomes a burden. But I guess I'm just putting on the record here that it was a great thing for me as well, and really helped me get through lockdown.
Yeah, well, it's been clearly just so helpful for everyone. I mean, I know from my personal experience, I've made a couple of short films. Not all of them have released, but at the time you're listening to this, but one will have. It will be on the YouTube channel Between Paradise. You'll be able to go and find one of the short films we made. And I was speaking to the person, Lara. She's in the film physically. You can see her. She has a small dance sequence, and I've spoken to her about making films remotely, because she filmed it at home where she lives. And I edited it here with all the other elements, so it was a completely remote project, and she just said thank you, because it gave her something to do creatively again. And so I started from a place of wanting to just sort of go through my creative ambitions, because I was missing it, and it inadvertently led to other people getting that same thing. And it was I brought in people I'd never met before. So actually during this time, like you said, I've actually met people, new actors and actresses, that I will definitely be working with again during lockdown, which is crazy.
I know. It's that thing, isn't it, of it is possible to turn a difficulty and a difficult situation into an opportunity. And I think that is what a lot of people have done. I'm just speaking more generally now about how people have responded to being in quarantine and being in lockdown. But I've seen it everywhere, like so many people just responding with such initiative and creativity, because we've all been forced to think about things differently. And I think that although it has been a horrific situation and there's been so much pain and suffering and anger and uncertainty as part of it, I think there is also a flip side to that, and there has been some real beautiful, not just creativity, but community. And I just think it's a strange old time, but I think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of it. I'm getting all reflective now. You're getting reflective with me as I look out my window and think about the state of the world.
As the sun starts to set, and it's been a very fascinating chat from that perspective. I mean, very soon, if we're sort of looking ahead to future episodes of the show, we've got MacLeod Lamata coming back on. We've had her on the 1 year special. We had her on the 11th episode talking about meditation, and she's going to be talking about meditation and mental health again from the lockdown perspective. So our meditation chat before was more about it in general, and we're going to sort of focus it for this next chat. So this is a subject that isn't going away on the My Generation podcast, that reflection and looking back. I mean, Emily, sort of as we bring this episode to a close, I mean, it's, I've asked this question before, and it's the one I tend to finish with as well. So it's about what you've sort of learned from being on the show and talking about Doctor Who and social media and reflection on this week's episode of the show.
Oh gosh, what have I learned? Well, as always, I've been reminded of the fact that I can talk a lot. I've kind of, do you know what? This has been a really good opportunity to just actually stop and reflect on something that has been a huge part of my life and a huge part of the Doctor Who community for a good few months. It all stopped a few days ago and it was a bit of a kind of, right, take a breather, have a bit of a rest. And this has kind of been one of the first occasions I've actually sat down and properly thought about it and talked about it. So I've learned just from talking to you that being ambitious is something to pursue, and I think that applies to anyone. Like, have ambitious ideas and run with them. And I genuinely think that if it's a good enough idea and you're willing to work hard enough, that amazing things can happen. And yeah, I've just kind of been I've got quite emotional talking to you, thinking about just how people have come together and kind of the spirit of lockdown and the things that have happened, because the spirit of Doctor Who lockdown has just been a wonderful thing, and it's not something that will be forgotten for a long, long time, I think. So yeah, I guess I've just been reminded that, yeah, in every bad situation, there is opportunity for positivity, for change, for creativity, and yeah, I'm really proud to have been a part of that in a Doctor Who themed way during lockdown.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more that it will definitely stand the test of time. I mean, you caused ripples across the internet, and that's definitely translated through to people. They're talking about this. It's not just something that exists in Twitter, and it will go beyond that, and that's really awesome to see. I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't already followed Emily on Twitter, I'm putting it in the description so you can, because you can go back and look at all the amazing Doctor Who lockdown stuff that was happening and all the little videos that we talked about. So if by any chance you missed it, you can always go back and look at the content that's over on Twitter and all the people that Emily's in touch with that tweeted along and did these little videos. Great projects. Well, Emily, it's been amazing to have you back on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And just picking up on something you said there about it being about people, I just think you're so right on that. And that's what is so wonderful about, I don't know, just doing this podcast and talking with you. Like, we're two people that have had two different lockdown experiences and are just sharing those things. And I just think, the power of people is wonderful. People are great. Every person has the opportunity and the potential to be great. And I think that it's totally what this lockdown has been about for me. It's not about my tweet-alongs, Twitter, me, Doctor Who lockdown, or even Doctor Who. It is about people, and I think people are great.
Yeah, and I think there's actually been like a really strong community sense in this time. So I've, before lockdown, as I said, busiest period of my life, you get caught in a treadmill a little bit. And in this time, I've actually reconnected with people that I haven't spoken to in a long time, probably too long. And so I think that another amazing silver lining, because I know it's a terrible situation, but there have been so many great silver linings, is that it makes you remember who you should be connecting with, and it brings you back with people, and it connects you with new people in weird ways like never before.
Totally agree.
And I think that before we get any more in depth with it, will be an incredible spot to end on. Otherwise you're
going to have too much, and you're going to have a big edit job on your hands.
Be again an extremely long episode of the show, I think, but we do love that. That's one of the reasons I enjoy the show, is that we're not fixed down by any length of time. This has been such a fascinating chat. If you haven't already heard episode 50, it was the first part of my chat with Emily about Doctor Who, so please do head back to that episode and tune in with the first part of the discussion. Let us know if you've heard Doctor Who Lockdown. If you've got any opinions, you can either leave them in the comments here or head over to Emily's Twitter. I imagine we're going to have a lot of people from Emily's Twitter listening here today as well, so I say hello to you. And if you are new, please do consider subscribing wherever you're listening, YouTube, SoundCloud, or Spotify, as we do bring new episodes every Thursday with a variety and a plethora of new guests here on the My Generation podcast. People based in Kent between 18 and 35 talking about a variety of different things. One thing I'm looking to talk to people about more is if you're in the music industry, please get in touch with the Facebook page. I'm looking to talk to more musicians here on the show. So if you're based in Kent and you're between 18 and 35, we might be able to have you on the show to talk about your music creating process. We've had a few people on before. Emily, you'll know Leo Wolf. We had him on... Yeah, we had Leo on talking about his music and interestingly Star Wars as well. That fascinating chats with Leo as always. We've got so much great stuff coming up. And that's why we're leaving it this week on the My Generation podcast. Again, Emily, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for listening to me witter on for a good hour and a bit.
An hour and a bit.
If people were still in lockdown, that would be fine because they might not have much else to do, but maybe people have got lives now, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, just for the context of whenever you're listening to this, it's the 10th of June when we're recording this, so that should give you plenty of context. I put all that in the description of every episode anyway, usually, just so you know when we record these, because it's usually a very randomised mix of recording dates and such. So I'm very excited to share upcoming content here on the My Generation podcast. We've got Aaron Frith coming very soon, Shami's updated meditation episode, and so much more. But that's it, and it's a goodbye from Emily.
Goodbye!
And it is a goodbye from me, and we'll tune in with you next Thursday for the next episode of the My Generation podcast.